the fourfold way. The fourfold way is a philosophy that was brought to us by Angeles Arrien, and she is a cultural anthropologist. So she dug into different cultures around the world, and she brought up what was common about all of us and gave us a real perspective of who we are and how we could help navigate our world together. And in this story, it's all symbolic. Like, we play every part. And even the manger is symbolic. Manger is a French word that means to eat, because that's where they fed the animals. So today we're going to feast on that story ourselves. The fourfold way talks about 4 ways of being: the healer, the visionary, the warrior, and the teacher. So the healer is called to pay attention to what has heart and meaning. The visionary comes to tell the truth without shame or blame. The warrior shows up to be present, and then the teacher shares without attachment to outcome. And all of these archetypes are within us, so we look within us to find these examples, to see how we can better embody some of these characteristics and these medicines, some of these energies, how to have better balance in our lives, and how to appreciate each other. Because some of us are healers, some of us are visionaries, some of us are warriors, some of us are just stronger in certain areas. We have all of them within us. Some of us just excel at certain aspects of this. Last week we talked about Mary, and we showed how Mary had this impeccable faith, and the angel came to her and gave her this immaculate conception. What is the immaculate conception? It's a conception that's so pure that it's untouched by man or woman. It's just this idea that came to her is so pure. She says to the angel, "Let it be done unto me." Pretty bold statement when you get an immaculate conception, because most of us, as we talked about last week, wrestle with it. And so Mary is this great example of how she is stepping into her visionary role. The visionary tells the truth without pain or shame. She goes to Joseph and she says, "This angel came to me and gave me this immaculate conception." This idea that I'm supposed to deliver to the world. What's interesting for me is that many of us like to take these scenarios and these examples and say this is a special experience. But actually, all of us are visited by angels all of the time. Angels are what? Messengers of love. So in our lives today, we're surrounded by messengers of love. We're angels for each other. Showing up in a note or holding the door open, or just any example of an extension of love is an angel. So Mary receives this vision, and she represents the visionary, and the visionary is one who brings his or her voice and vision into the world, and who refuses to edit it, to sugarcoat it, to water it down, to hide it, to modify it in any way whatsoever. The visionary is really unapologetic and unharnessed about, maybe even a little wild, because they're living on the circumference of what has never been before. That's why it's a vision. Even sometimes it can feel very unpopular. We see this example in The Emperor's New Clothes with the little boy who's like, the king's naked. He just showed up, he saw, he told the truth without blame or shame. He didn't say the king is horrible and naked, he just said the king's naked. This is just the truth. Do you guys see this? So this is good medicine for all of us, especially for those who want to create. If we're into creating, it's really important for us to tap into our visionary aspects, because if we're not pushing into the mystery of the unknown, we're just conforming and conforming. It requires for us to be unabashedly transparent and authentic about our truth and our message and who we're here to be. And so Mary shows these visionary skills, and she goes without blame or shame to Joseph, and she's birthing forth this Christ. And the visionary has the gift of speaking. That's what, when we think about visionary, you might think it's seeing, but it's actually speaking. And when somebody has strong visionary skills, because they're able to speak a higher truth, people follow them. So last night we saw this great movie, Harriet Tubman. She had exceptional visionary skills. In fact, there's a scene where this man's telling her, like, "Harriet, you can't go back to the South and save these people." And she's like, "Don't you tell me what I can or cannot do. I'm authorized by my vision." And in the movie, it literally shows how she falls down to the ground and she has these visions. These visions from God. So, she's a beautiful example of what a visionary can do. The visionary does not work in form. They work with a higher hand. They're guided by a north star, just like those holy travelers going to Bethlehem. And in the movie, when she goes to freedom, she can't read. She can't read a map, she can't read signs, so he's like, "Follow the North Star." And I think that's such a beautiful thing, because it's like, follow that intuition, follow that light. When Mary receives the vision, she says, "Okay, this is going to happen. It might not make any sense to the world, but I'm not interested in making sense in the world. I'm interested in birthing miracles." So when it comes to a visionary, if you know somebody who's a visionary, a good advice for you would be to get with them or get out of their way. You know what I'm saying? That's basically plowed over by them, because visionaries they cannot help but be a strong arrow for their new idea. The next archetype is the warrior. So Joseph in this story represents the warrior. When Mary comes to him and tells him of her visitation from the angel and that she's going to give birth to this baby, the warrior shows up. That's what the warrior represents, just showing up. He doesn't make promises, he doesn't make soliloquies, he doesn't make accusations, he doesn't make demands. He just shows up. That's all he does. Showing up is such a beautiful extension of love, a way to show unconditional love. Because have you ever experienced somebody just showing up for you, you know? Or have you ever had the opportunity to just show up for someone else? A lot of times around like funerals, like when you show up for someone, it feels like it's not that important, but it's so important. So the visionary is about the future, but the warrior is about the present, about, you know, working with what's present. Everyone here has warrior energy because you showed up today. Like, especially if you show up in the wintertime when it's cold out, you're like, I could stay in bed. The warrior is able to empower others, not necessarily through what they say, but how they show up, by their actions. A warrior understands how to honor and to respect. They set limits and boundaries, and their actions and their words are in complete alignment. So when a challenge comes or presents itself to them, they don't faint or freeze or fear. They just get with it. Their actions show that they're saying, I got you. You know, that their actions show that. Joseph is a great example of this warrior. And he didn't hold the vision, but he held the visioner. He loved Mary so much that he made space for her to deliver this vision. And he shows up as his father for Jesus as well. The fact that he even taught Jesus his line of work. He was a carpenter. Jesus became a carpenter because of his dad. When we hear about Jesus, like giving praise to his audacious heavenly father, like that's definitely tied to the fact that he had an audacious earthly father. So the warrior shows up by his actions, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. Joseph shows up and he chooses to be present with no resentments, with no sense of duty, but rather this very grounded sense of passion. Like, there's no question in the warrior's agenda. It's like, this guy is not going to miss this for the world. Like, he gets it. Universally, there are three kinds of powers that go with the warrior. When we're talking about a shamanic teaching, it said that if you embody these three powers, then you have big medicine. And the first power is the power of presence. That if you have this warrior energy, that you have charisma, that you have a magnetic personality. And so that's the first one, is just presence, that you can feel that they're standing there with you. The second one is communications, but it's not really what's said, but it's how it's shared. So in regards to the power of communication, there is alignment of content, there is right timing, and there's right placement. It comes at the appropriate time, it's the right place, and it's for the right people. It's hard to teach how to do that, but you can teach how not to do that. Gossip is a way not to do that, okay? So look at the content of gossip. It's no good. And what is the content of gossip usually? Where is it presented? There's no right time for gossip. There's just no right time. And it's usually never delivered to the right person, right? So that's not the way to have the power in communication. The warrior also has the power to communicate without words, like Joseph. He has this beautiful communication skill. And I like to always play this joke around this time. It's like, oh, Joseph, he was so eloquent. And in fact, it's one of the most beautiful pieces of the Bible that was written, and how Joseph spoke about the journey that he made with Mary and how amazing it was that he spoke of this divine conversation that he had when Mary came to him. And the truth is, we don't get any of that. He showed us without words exactly how to show up. He showed us who he was without words. So presence, communication, and positioning. The part about positioning when it comes to the warrior is, it makes me think about playing soccer. Like when you're on a team, you got to know your position. If you know your position, then everyone else can trust you. And if you know your position, it demonstrates that you also have trust in everyone else's position on the field. Joseph knew his position in this story. And he knew that his position was no less important than Mary's position. That they were equal. That he was needed to complete this story. But he didn't have to make a big fanfare about it. He didn't have to try and push his vision. He wasn't like, hey, let's do it this way. He just said, like, I'm going to show up. So the warrior's willingness to show up and play the part. The next one is the healer. And the healer pays attention to what has heart and meaning. In regards to the nativity story, this would be the kings, the shepherds, and the drummer boy. They all paid attention. They paid attention to the signs, the symbols, the synchronicities, the northern star. Like they really smelled the wind of information that was coming their way. They were going to follow their heart's desire. And this is how they ended up at the manger. And this is why they ended up at the manger. This invitation to see this holy birth was something that drew them in. And this was a calling of the heart. It wasn't like, oh God, I gotta go do this thing. No? They would not miss this for the world because it was something that drew them from their heart. So healers share their gifts. You'll know you're a healer if you don't show up empty-handed. My dad used to say to me, like, when you come to my house, ring the doorbell with your elbows. You know what that means? Like your hands are so full that you gotta go like this. So those of you who have that healer energy, you cannot help but bring these gifts. And these gifts, the true gifts, are the time, the treasure, and the talents. And again, they all are equal, but they all are shown to us differently in the story of the nativity scene. In our community, there's healers who come and they share their gifts. And we have the kings who write the checks, right? And we have the shepherds who take care of the people. And then we have the drummer boys and girls who sing for us and who bring music. So healers take what they have and then they make it even better. Like that, there's something very magical about healers. They have this great gift of giving gifts from the heart. If you're a healer, the gifts that are given from the healer are so thoughtful. Like it's like they really take the time to consider the gift and who they're giving it to. How do we conjure up more healer energy for ourselves? Well, we pay attention to what has heart and meaning. What is calling us? What do we value? Where do we have a full-bodied yes? What makes us jump out of bed in the morning? If we were to track that and to follow that, we would not only have healing for ourselves, but we would actually be able to bring that out into the world in a more healed way. Healers don't work. They never work. They live in their vocation. They're, like I said, they're sort of these magic makers. And in this section of shamanic teachings, they talk about the healers, and they say, like, the way that they heal people is that when you come to them, they'll say, when did you stop singing? When did you stop dancing? When did you stop telling your stories? And when did you stop enjoying the comfort of your own silence? So the healers understand the ritual that's necessary for us in community and how it's not like an extra thing, that it's a necessary thing for our souls. It's soul food. The healers pay attention to what has heart and meaning, and then they invest in it. They say, this is really important. The questions we would want to ask for ourselves for the healer is, are we listening to our hearts? And are we sharing our gifts? And who do you know that shares this way? And how can you honor them and celebrate them for being a healer in your life? The next archetype is the teacher. And the teacher is being open to outcome without attachment. So, this is a very interesting medicine. Sometimes we do it so incorrectly. When you're teaching, it should be completely unconditional. It's the same as giving something away. Like, I'm giving you this inspiration. I'm not going to judge what you do with it. I can teach you to count. If you decide to use the mechanism of counting for counting your enemies or counting your blessings, like, I have nothing to do with that. I can't bring back that wisdom from you and say, you're misusing counting. You don't get to use it anymore. So, I can teach you about affirmative prayer, but I can't give you the fire in the belly. The teacher can extend the concepts, but what happens to those concepts is not the teacher's business. So to be able to just extend unconditionally, being open without attachment is like saying, I can bring the horse to water, but I can't make them drink. Like, that's what the teacher does. It's like, hey, ring the bell, everybody come on in. Everybody has a right to be here, but, you're going to take what you're going to take. But let me tell you something. Everyone is your teacher. Like, everyone is your teacher. You should always be open to receiving information, inspiration from everyone around you, because this is just a facade for God. Well, that's good.
That's very good.
You can teach, but you can't control. Okay, so teaching is not controlling. So we need to be open to outcome. In the nativity story, of course, like I said, Jesus is this teacher, and he exemplifies the aspects of teacher in the fourfold way. His wisdom comes from clarity. He could see the whole spectrum of the situations. He had great discernment, and then, of course, he had detachment. And he didn't even take credit for his teachings. It's not me, but the Father within me that does the work. That is a beautiful channel. Mother Teresa says it like this. She says, I feel like a pencil in God's hand. God writes through us, and however imperfect the instrument that we may be, he writes beautifully. The divine writes beautifully through all of us. Is that not marvelous? She ends with a question. Yeah, it is. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. The visionary. to tell the truth without shame or blame, the warrior to show up and to be present, the healer to pay attention to what has heart and meaning, the teacher to share without the attachment to outcome. You are the Blessed Mother who dares to tell the truth without shame or blame. You are that. You are Joseph who shows up to be present. You are that. You are the shepherds, the kings, and the drummer boys who pay attention to what has heart and meaning. And you are the Christ. You probably don't hear that often enough. But you are the Christ. You are the light of God. There's a light within you that cannot fail, that is Christ consciousness, that is beckoning to be awakened today. And you get to love from that place unconditionally, with no conditions on what the world does with it or doesn't do with it. These are energies that will help to bring us to a more holy ground this holiday season. And that's the word.